My mom was the church pianist. We never missed church. We're the folks who showed up at church an hour early and stayed an hour late. We had our own key. I'm telling you the truth. We lived at church. My mom was a wonderful pianist, conservatory trained. Wasn't anything she couldn't play. Man, you'd put music down, she could play it. And our whole life was me listening to my mom play with the choir and music groups, anything. Then one day our life got turned upside down. I came walking downstairs and my mom was in the kitchen getting breakfast ready. I'll never forget her words. She looked at me and she said, "Davy, I think I'm really sick, son. Run get your dad." And I watched my mom walk out of the kitchen, sit down on the living room couch, and my mom never walked again. Polio had come to our house with a vengeance. Within the hour, I watched my mom curl up and start gasping for breath. I watched her struggle just to swallow. When the hospital medics came, they said, "We don't know if she'll be alive to get to the hospital, but we'll try." When they took my mom out the door, I didn't realize I wouldn't see her for over 2 years. I tell every, don't you ever miss the chance to hug your mom's neck. Because you don't know when the last time will be. 2 years is a long time when you're a little boy. They took my mom, put her in an iron lung, and all we got week after week was reports she's not going to make it. Then reports we think she's going to make it, but she'll be totally paralyzed. Finally, they said we think she's going to have a limited use, maybe a little bit of her arms, but they said, now we're going to break the quarantine and you can come see your mom. My sister and I were the most two excited kids in all the world. Just to see her was going to be big doings. We went to the hospital. They put us behind a glass plate. We were looking down a hall, and they said, "We'll bring your mom to the door, and you'll see her." And I don't sound like much to you right now, but when you haven't seen your mom for 2 years, you can't imagine what that means. My sister and I, we showered twice. Really, we wanted to be perfect to see her. They wheeled my mom to the door, and when I saw her, my heart broke. She couldn't turn her head to look at us. And she had to ask somebody to turn her head so she could see us. And when I saw that, I got upset with God. I said, "God, this isn't fair. My mom's done nothing but serve you. Church is our life. You didn't have to do this to us. I know people who don't go to church, God, and they got none of this. And you could have left her neck. You could have made it where she could turn her head." And I looked at my mom, and my heart broke. My mom looked back at us, and how many of you know moms they know what their kids are thinking? How many of you know that? She sent a nurse down, and the nurse came down, and she said, "Are you Davy?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Your mom says you're not supposed to think that." And I did exactly what every kid does. I said, "I'm not supposed to think what?" She runs back to my mom, comes back to me, and here's what she said. "Your mom said he's doing all things well." I thought, Mom, if it makes you better to say that, okay, fine. But this isn't well. The nurse looked at me, and here's her words. She said, your mom said, God's molding. Another year went by. They finally decided she was no longer contagious. My mom could come home. And when my mom got home, the first thing, here she comes in a wheelchair, strapped, can't hold her head up. Strapped in a wheelchair. First thing, she comes in the door. My dad said, before we put Mom in bed, let's have family devotions together. It's been a long time. My dad read from the Bible. Then before we prayed, everybody gave their prayer request. You know what my mom's prayer request was? I almost fell over. She said, pray God gives me something to do for him now. And I said right out loud, Mom, we've been down that road. We were doing everything for him, and look at what it got us. I said, you can't play the piano anymore. You can't even sit up. And my mom said, it don't have to be the piano. She said, I miss playing it more than you can imagine. But she said, anything. I just want to do something for him. Every night. That was her prayer request. Pray God. A lady strapped in a wheelchair, can't feed herself. Pray God gives me something to do for him. The pastor of the church we were going to, as mad as I ever got in my life, he came to visit my folks. And my mom said to this preacher, she said, pray God gives me something to do. And that preacher looked at my mom and he said, Miss Gibbs, you need to get this through your head. God's done with you. And when he said that, I almost hit him. I thought to myself, you may be right, but you got a lot of nerve to say it. And boy, I was mad. On the way out the door, I told him, I said, God will decide when he's done with us, not you, mister. And my mom, she said, now, Davy, words just come to you. Don't say nothing, son. Just don't say nothing. Well, I was going to say a lot more. You know, if you're always looking for people to say the right thing, you're going to be very disappointed in life. Very disappointed. About a month went by. A preacher stopped by our house, and he said, we got a brand new work down here, and he said, we got a Sunday school, and these were his words. He said, it's a mess. That's his words. It's a mess. He said, some days we got no kids. Sometimes we got 5 or 6. A big day we have 10 kids. But he said, I'm telling you, it's a mess. And he looked at my folks and he said, would you be willing to work with that mess? And I thought, boy, this guy got away with words. He calls it a mess. The minute he left, I said to my mom, we're not messing with this mess, are we? I said, look, I'm telling you right now, he wants to palm it off on you because it's aggravating him. And he wants his mess to become your mess, and we already got enough messes in our life. You know what my mom said? She said, I asked God for anything. And she said, one nice thing is kids aren't afraid of me in my wheelchair. She said, adults just stare at me, but kids don't. My mom and dad prayed about it. They said, we'll be glad to do it. Boy, I told my mom, this is the dumbest thing I ever heard of. Going to a Sunday school with no kids. And I reminded her every day. I said, you watch. I'm going to be right in this. You know what my mom did? Every day she had us get her up, dress her, and put her in front of the mirror, and for an hour she practiced her Sunday school lesson. And then she had us put her back in bed. And I thought, man, she's trying so hard. Come the Sunday, we go to Sunday school, there's not a kid there, none. And I told my mom, see, there's no kids here, none. She looked at me and she said, no, there's kids here. I said, who? She said, you and your sister. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I'm doomed to go to Sunday school with my sister the rest of my life. But my mom gave us that lesson like there were 100 or 1,000 kids there. Finally, one day, a couple months later, my mom said, you know, I figured out what's wrong. I said, what's that? She said, our Sunday school don't have any kids in it. And I said, way to go, Mom. You got it. She said, but I've been praying and I got an idea. I said, what's that? She said, tomorrow I want you to take me downtown to the big bus company. And we're going to ask them to give us a bus so we can bring some kids to our Sunday school. I said, the big one in town? She said, yeah. I said, I don't think they give them away down there. I think they do. You know what she said? She said, they'll just have to. She said, I've been praying, and we're going to watch God do what only God can do. Boy, the next day I take her down there, huge bus company. No place to park. We finally park up against the wall. I mean, there's hundreds of buses. We park under a window. I get my mom out. I said, now don't be disappointed when they say no. She said, you just take me in. And I get her in her wheelchair. I strap her all up. We go in. Come up to the receptionist. The receptionist said, can I help you? My mom said, we've come so you can give us a bus. And the lady said, I beg your pardon? And she said, we got a Sunday school. I'd like you to give us a bus. The lady said, I don't think we do that here, but she said, I'll call somebody down. She calls the vice president down. Guy comes down, very nice. My mom said, look, we got a Sunday school and I got a heart to see some kids know Jesus. Could you give us a bus we could use? And the man said, lady, we don't do that, and we're not going to do that. And he said, now, I'm real sorry to tell you no, but if you get some money, and he said, they're expensive, you come back. But he said, I'm telling you right now, I've worked here 35 years. We have never done that. We're not going to start now. And he said, I just want you to know, I'm sorry, but no. And he was real polite, but adamant. And my mom said, well, I appreciate you telling me that. I mean, she's in a wheelchair. She said, before I leave, could I ask one question? He said, sure. My mom said, do the buses belong to you? And he said, what do you mean? She said, do you own them or do you just work here? And he said, well, I don't own them, but I'm the vice president. He said, no, the buses don't belong. And my mom said, well, no wonder you can't give me a bus. They're not yours to give. And the receptionist sitting there said, yeah, that's right, they don't belong to him. And I'm kind of like, you know, that's pretty good. That's, way to go, Mom, score one. I mean, that was, she said, can I talk to the owner? He said, lady, the owner won't talk to you. She said, would you call? He called, here comes the owner of the whole thing. That man walks down, he said, I'll tell you why I'm here. He said, you parked your car right under my office window. And unbeknownst to you, I saw the pain you went through just to get in here. He said, I've never seen anybody care about something that much. Now he said, I'm not giving you a bus, but I thought I ought to tell you personally. My mom said, well, thank you. She said, before I leave, can I just say one thing? And he said, sure. She said, one day when you stand before God, he's going to be awfully upset that you didn't give me a bus. When she said that, I went, Mom, lighten up, man. Oh. The man said, what? She said, you could help me make a difference in where kids spend eternity. And she said, I don't think God's going to like it. That man looked at my mom and he said, "Lady, I got a question for you." My mom said, "What?" He said, "If I gave you a bus, who would drive it? You?" And my mom said, "Well, you know what? You're right." She said, "I hadn't thought of that." She said, "I need you to give me a bus and a driver." And when she said that, the vice president goes, "I don't believe this lady. This is unbelievable." He said, "Okay, lady, you hear me. Now you hear me." He said, "I will give you one bus and one driver one Sunday." And the vice president said, "Al," and I love what he said. He said, "Look, she's already pointed out to you they don't belong to you." And if I want to give a bus away, I'll give one of my buses away. He said, "But I'm only committing it for one Sunday." I said, "I don't believe this. I don't believe she got a bus and a driver." My mom, "Oh, thank you, thank you." She said, I sitting here, I got to tell you, I need 3 of them." He said, "You need 3? She said, "There's 3 parts to this town." And she said, "God really wanted me to ask for 3, and I didn't have the nerve." Could I please have 3 buses and 3 drivers? I love what the man said. He said, "Lady, you're unbelievable." He said, "I'll give you 3 buses and 3 drivers for one Sunday, but you got to be dead sure God knows about this, okay?" What he told my mom. And my mom said, "Oh, I will. On the way home in the car, I said, "I don't believe this, Mom. You got 3 buses, you..." She said, "I didn't get them." She said, "Son, I can't dress myself. I got to be pushed everywhere I go." But she said, "I serve a God who can mold people. And he can use what he molds them into." He only gave us 3 buses and 3 drivers for one Sunday, because the second Sunday he gave us 4. And within 5 years, he was giving us 35 buses and 35 drivers every Sunday. And he did it for over 20 years and never charged a penny. The Sunday school with no kids in it, in 7 years' time, never had less than 5,000 children every Sunday. And it was run by a lady who couldn't hold her own head up. He wrote my mom a letter at the end. And Brother Rowe, I love the letter. He said, "Miss Gibbs, best thing I ever did was give you some buses." He said, "Because I gave you some buses," he said, "my whole family is now saved and on their way to heaven." He said, "Because my kids rode your buses." And then he put in parentheses, which were really my buses. Can you imagine? My mom talked him into painting the Sunday school name on the buses. He said, "Because of you, almost every bus driver I've got is saved and on his way to heaven." He said, "Because a lady in a wheelchair wouldn't let him sit in the bus." Every Sunday she'd have me push her. I don't care how deep the snow was. I don't care how bad she was hurting. She'd have me go bus to bus. And she'd say to the driver, now you put out your cigarette. You're going to church with me today. She said, it's time for you to clean up your life and get saved. Come on. He said, thanks for doing what couldn't be done. Are you ready to be molded into what he wants to do? Search me, mold me. Third prayer, his strength in your weakness. Search me, mold me, lead me. Not my will, but thy will be done. You say, but I got plans. That's the problem. We all do. We've all got our own agendas, our own ideas, our own plans. And God's looking for somebody who says, you just lead, I'll follow. Wonderful hymn of invitation, where he leads me, I will follow. But what a Bible truth. Anywhere, anywhere. Put heaven's flashlight on me. Search me. Mold me. Make me into what you want me to be. And you lead me. His strength is made perfect in weakness. Father, thank you tonight for these dear people. Thank you for the great truths of the Word of God that are so precise. Forgive us for only reading part of the instructions. Indeed, your grace is sufficient for us. But may we never forget that your strength is made perfect in our weakness. Tonight, Father, search us. And God, I pray, mold us and lead us